Hello, hello.
Hello, James. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you doing, Stuart?
Doing awesome, thanks.
Very nice to meet you. Where are you right now?
I am just outside Toronto, Ontario,
Ah,
up here in the Great White North.
are you guys getting any of this winter storm? Well,
No,
it's
it's a
just been like
beautiful,
a winter
beautiful
season,
sunny day
really.
here. All that snow is all east of us, over by New York and Boston. We don't have any of it.
But you guys have had a brutal winter, as far as I'm concerned, right? Like you've had at
Uh,
least some kind of.
no, if I look out my window, I've got about a foot of snow. Roads are all clear. It's bright and sunny. We've only had one snowfall.
There you go. A foot of
Yeah,
snow, and that being
yeah,
normal weather. I guess that's the Toronto thing. That's
yeah.
awesome.
That's it. But
Very
it's going to
cool.
rain tomorrow, so it might even all go away.
Okay. Then you can have some nice sleep.
Yes,
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on with us, Stuart. Why don't you tell me just a kind of a brief intro, a little bit about you, a little bit about Element?
sure. Me, I always tell people in a nutshell, I'm like a science geek that got his MBA from Street Smart University. So, um, I've worked in the industry for a number of years. Went to I actually worked in the industry, left, went to school, did 2 degrees in nutritional sciences, and a graduate degree in nutrition and human metabolism. And then I came out, went back in industry, and then back in 2005 after helping a couple other companies build business. One in particular, Iovate Health Sciences, that we built that out from about 40 million. I left about 220 million, and two of my key executives here were there to over $700 million in revenue, and the owner of that company exited at $1 billion valuation about 2.5, 3 years ago. Um, and then I was working in international sales, helping build business for Canada's largest vitamin company throughout everywhere outside North America. I basically managed and helped build out distribution with foreign distributors. And then I left all that in 2005 and ventured into my first company, which was Life Science Nutritionals. And I spent a lot of time building that company, and I sold it in 2015. And basically, within that company, um, it wasn't my idea at the start, but I saw the big opportunity for gummy-based vitamins coming down the pipeline. That I met a guy over in Dubai who was from Germany, a pharmacist who was working on the concept back then. So I eventually got into the gummy space, and I was one of the early movers in that space. So I built out two key brands here in Canada, one being Iron Kids, one being Adult Essentials. Our Iron Kids brand, we became the leading brand in Canada after about 2 years on the market. Grew very rapidly. Grew that company from 2008 at the market crash to 2015 by over 2,500%. And then I exited and started up Element Nutrition, where our main target is the 45 plus demographic, which is mostly ignored in our marketplace. Like only 10% of marketing dollars is spent marketing to people 45 plus. And yet they control over 65%. I think now 70% of all capital assets in
So
North America.
let me stop and rewind you just in case
Yeah.
people aren't familiar with. So, for jumping into demographics, what exactly is it that you do? What is Element? What is it that you're offering? And also, those when you said gummy based vitamins, you're talking about these chewable ones that I know there's some kids ones that I have for my 4 year olds like that.
That's
Is that
right.
what you meant? Okay,
That's what I meant. Yeah.
awesome. And then with Element, what is it that you guys do or sell or make?
So right now we have a patented formulation of essential amino acids that was developed over 17 years, which now has 29 clinical studies behind it. And what that formulation does is it actually helps your body rebuild lean muscle. So as you age, you lose lean muscle mass at a rate of 1 to 3% a year, starting in your 40s. So everybody out there knows what osteoporosis is. Everyone's very familiar with it. Well, muscle loss as you age is called sarcopenia, another fancy medical name, but it just means muscle, basically means muscle wasting or muscle loss. So the Center for Disease Control and the World Health Organization categorize it as a disease state back in 2016 that the medical community needs to pay attention to. So we've stepped into this marketplace with a very unique patented product. We hold exclusive global rights to it. and also we now have rights in North America to take it and also move into the sports nutrition market. So we have a very unique product. It has clinical efficacy. Where in our market, there's not a lot of true nutritional products on the market that can come out there and say that, yeah, we're clinically proven and we're patented, and we actually do what we say. So we've now had that. So I've taken that IP. I've created a brand called Rejuvenate. Rejuvenate is the brand that's in both North America, all over North America. So we're throughout CVS across the country, Walgreens across the country. Most recently, we're now in Sam's Club across the country, and also work with the largest retailers in Canada, which are Loblaw, Shoppers Drug Mart, and Rexall pharmacies. So we built out very significant amount of distribution, which now we're working to capitalize on that and grow our brand and our sales through that core.
Awesome. And how did you come up with this? Is this something that you stumble into, or did it morph into? Because it sounds like you got your science background, and it sounds like this is a very science-based product. You've patented, you own the IP for this. What inspired you to come up with this?
Actually, it's a good little story. I've always been, very creative and innovative in the nutrition space. And then back when I was in grad school, I had read a lot of research by Dr. Robert Wolfe, who's the inventor of the IP. He's one of the top protein researchers in the world over the last, call it 30 years, highly respected globally. And he was doing work like 20 years ago at the Shriners Clinic in Texas, looking at burn patients and trying to find ways to increase protein synthesis or your body's ability to rebuild proteins after like significant whole body burns to help these patients recover. I read some of the research back then, and I looked at it, and he was tinkering with this amino acid profile. And even back then I said, hey, you know what? This would be good for mass market and the masses. It doesn't have to be as concentrated because you and I aren't burn victims, but it still can have a positive impact. So I actually had that parked on my computer for a long, long time. And I was planning on bringing it to market. And my associate dean came in to see me one day, and he said, hey, Stu, University of Arkansas has this unique IP that's patented, that's proven to increase muscle protein synthesis. And I basically said, that's great. I said, but I have a formula just like that on my computer. And I said, I based it off work by Dr. Robert Wolfe. And he said, Stu, I think he's the inventor. So that just started a really quick conversation. And I said, okay. I said, I get it. I go, let's get connected with these people. And I did. And we had a phone call with them like 2 days later. I took all the science home with me for the weekend. And I put my feet up in my living room and flipped and read through everything. And being a research scientist and knowing the whole pathway of muscle protein synthesis, it was like a no-brainer. It was like, okay, I go, this is the real deal. I can accelerate the growth of the company, because at that time I was working on developing formulations to create our own beverage to go into this adult nutrition market and disrupt it. So what this did is allow us to accelerate it. And since our dose is only 3.6 grams, and it's more effective than taking normal protein that a lot of people are consuming these days, it's a great market opportunity and a great way to innovate and bring great new products to market.
Huh. That's crazy. So did you ever end up I know that this is outside of your core product, but you got my attention with the burn victims thing. Did you guys end up pursuing the medical grade version of that for burn victims?
With every young company, we have our key focus. When our key focus is right now food, drug, mass. We're growing that out and working with our distributors. Our product's been well received in the marketplace, and it's doing very well. As we grow as a company, we will be venturing into that side of the market. So we have some clinical studies that we've designed that we can do on a very cost-effective basis, and even get grants from the government, et cetera. So limited cost basis on that. And then we plan on moving into oncology. People who have cancer have what's called severe cataxias, what's muscle wasting combined with organ wasting. So we believe at our higher doses, which we already have clinical data that shows we can increase muscle protein synthesis by 76% with one dose with no exercise. So for people fighting cancer, if we can slow muscle loss while they're going through chemotherapy or fighting cancer, we believe we can increase patient outcomes. And right now, if you walk into a cancer clinic and you're a patient, you go in there for chemo and you're leaving, they'll give you a 6-pack of a very common product out there. I won't bother mentioning who they are, but it's full of sugar and crap, and that's what they get to take home and drink, because these cancer patients have no appetite. So there's a huge market opportunity there that we plan on moving into as we grow up. And then we're also going to move into orthopedics. So people taking Rejuvenate at higher doses or even regular doses, pre and post surgery, will help speed up people recovering from, call it, knee replacement or hip replacement surgery. And one of the patents that we already have is based on recovery from hip replacement surgery. So that's the whole orthoskeletal category, not just in North America, but globally, is sitting there. And that's another place we plan on going.
Oh, that's awesome. And I asked less from a business perspective, from a personal perspective. So this is probably a lesser known fact, but my brother was a firefighter, and in 2008, God, I should know this, or 2009, he was in a fire and he fell through a floor and ended up in a basement. He ended up getting burnt pretty bad. He's fine now. He survived, but I remember going to the hospital. He's actually a complete joker. He's funny. The guy's like bandaged head to toe because they didn't know exactly where the damage was. And they're, rushing him into the OR to figure out how bad it is. And the guy's got sense of humor. He's like 3/4 dead. And I didn't know this, but what they do when you first get to the emergency room and they see that you're burned, they don't know what they're going to have to do. They literally put pig skin on you. Like they take skin from a pig and they lay it on you. So that, I don't know what it does medically, but as they're taking him into the OR, they're like, okay, yes, we're going to put the pigskin or whatever. And my brother goes, stop. Like they taking him in the cot or whatever. And he goes, what? He goes, you can't put pigskin on me. I'm Jewish. It's not kosher. Like he's obviously not kosher. He is Jewish, but definitely not kosher. But anyways, like what's funny to me about this was he ended up getting skin grafts and everything. Like I said, he's fully recovered now, but he was in the hospital for a while. And what I found really interesting was when they were giving him stuff to eat, like it's not that he wasn't hungry. He literally just couldn't function. He couldn't move. He couldn't do anything. Yeah. And so his diet was based off of these protein shakes. But literally, like the Ensure, like the stuff you give, geriatric patients. Yeah. And they said the reason why you're giving them Ensure is because of the protein, the high protein content, and that's what's going to help try and rejuvenate the skin.
It only has 9 grams of protein in it.
And that, to me, I was sitting there and I was like, hold on a second. This is like one of those, this is a burn center, one of the most specialized places in the country, certainly in the East Coast. And you guys are giving him Ensure, like this is your best. So first you put the pig skin on him, and now you're telling him like to drink these little things. Yeah. So that's really cool. So, anyways, that was asking because I do.
Sorry, you just broke up a little bit right there.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's certainly a need for something like that in the extreme cases, because the market obviously for near fetal burn victims is probably somewhat smaller, but that's there. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah. The best thing about it is there's multiple applications. Our runway as a company, like our growth runway, as we move through the call it the growth journey of the company. Like we have a very, very long runway. And I've got all the right people in here that know how to execute and get it done. So, as the founder and the guy who's doing this for the second time in his life, I'm pretty excited about the future because we got lots of great stuff to do.
So more specifically, now moving on to your flagship, or at least to the products that you currently have, where can people find them?
You can find, so in the United States which is our principal place of business. I know I'm officed here just outside Toronto, but I can turn my head and look out through the clear blue sky today, and I can basically look across the United States. So that's a big focus for us, and it's our major focus. Even in a company I helped previously build that I mentioned before, Iovate, 95% of our business was in the United States. We're experts on the U.S. business as well as, Canadian business as well, but that's our target. So in the United States, to answer your question, you can currently buy our single serve sachets, which come in a box of 30. at CVS across the entire country in 6,000 CVS stores. I developed an organic plant-based ready to drink, which is in a Tetra Pak. So you just screw the top off and drink it. We launched that with Walgreens. Walgreens back in June in 8,400 stores across the country. So you can find it there as well. You can also find the other sachets on Walgreens.com as well. So you can get both through Walgreens. We are now listed with Sam's Club. So we're now on the floor at every Sam's Club across the United States. So you can walk into Sam's Club today and you'll find our beverage on the floor right beside Boost, right beside Premier Protein. We're right there in the same aisle, right beside it. So that's a little over 16,000 points of distribution approximately in the United States. And then if you're a Canadian listener and you're in Canada, you can walk into Shoppers Drug Mart, Rexall, Loblaws, and find our product on their shelves. We're not at 100% of the Loblaw, Shoppers Drug Mart, Rexall stores as of yet, but we'll be changing over the next 4 months as we're continuing to expand our distribution base with them.
Okay, that's awesome. And one of the things, when I first found out about you guys, I was told, I don't know what the latest update in this, but one of the things that caught my attention that you guys were doing is that you were thinking about entering, or you're in the process of, or already have entered into the sports drink market, right? I'm talking about these athletes right now. I don't know exactly who you'd go up against, because right now you have the Gatorade, Powerade, Electrolyte, whatever,
Yep.
mix. But tell me about that.
Well, the sports nutrition market, so the estimates right now for 2021, it's a $13.8 billion market, and it's set to grow over the next. So aggregate growth for the next 5 years is estimated to be about 7.8%. So lots of growth in that market. What's unique about our intellectual property and our formulation is that we increase muscle protein synthesis by as much as 76%. That's higher than whey protein. So the entire sports nutrition market that's out there, where there's billions of dollars being spent on whey protein, we have the next best thing that's better than whey protein. So that gives us,
so whey protein. I think about like bodybuilders, or even people that are just trying to get to build up their performance. I guess bodybuilders are muscle related ones, but it probably applies to every type of athlete, right? Like that needs to have high output, right? So baseball, basketball, like anything requires muscles, which is pretty much anything I can think of. So this is, yeah.
I would say the protein market's really evolved over the last 10 years. So before, whey protein was just thought of being a bodybuilding product. But it's not just whey protein per se. The entire sports nutrition market, has plant protein and milk protein and lots of other products out there. One of the big advantages that we have is, one, our amino acid blend is actually also plant-based. And almost all plant proteins on the market are not what we call complete proteins. So they lack high quantities of what we call the essential amino acids. So by taking our product, instead of taking 15 grams of pea protein or brown rice protein, we're far more effective in that as well. Like, I joke around all the time and say, like, we're the greatest thing since sliced bread, and we're coming to market, and we're going to disrupt the market in a really big way in the sports nutrition category. Like our product, when you mentioned burn victims, and we've got data that shows we help stop muscle loss people who are on bed rest. So think of an athlete that breaks a limb or strains a limb and is immobilized for 4 to 6 weeks. What happens is that athlete now has what's called muscle atrophy, and their muscles actually shrink while they're not using them. Well, if they're taking our amino acid blend, which actually it's called Promito, and it's coming to market very soon. That's public knowledge. It's been out there in a press release. If they take Promito while they're recovering, we can limit or even prevent muscle loss, which means that once they can get back to training and get back to the playing field or the ice rink, or whatever sport they're in, they can recover faster and get back faster. And we've ran data on the cost of losing a player, like per game. So one of the things we looked at is in hockey, because we're Canadian, Austin Matthews, one of the most highest paid and best players in the NHL right now. If he goes down, it costs a team $127,000 US a day. Like the cost is huge. So
Wow.
we can enter in that market category and help all athletes that are recovering. We can help all athletes that are strength trained to get bigger, better, faster, stronger. And we also can help them with recovery at the same time. So our product Promino is something new and innovative, and there's been nothing like this on the market basically ever. Go ahead.
So I'm an athlete. I get hurt. It's clear that this is a good way, or I'm the owner of a team and I have an athlete that's hurt. It's clear this is going to be the one that's going to try and get us over this hump. But if I'm either a player or a team owner, there's a proactive way too, where I can use this to actually increase the output in whatever which way, right? With all these, because I'm as far away from a scientist or an athlete as you can come up with, but but you're training for things. You're taking these supplements or drinks. You're building up your muscle. You're building up your ability to create muscle, and you're building up your output. This is essentially a proactive as well as a reactive. Is that right? Am I understanding that correctly?
Absolutely. Yep. Okay. You use it daily, just to maintain strength, helping increase strength when you're training. If you look at a pro athlete that's going through, a regular season, whether it's basketball, whether it's football, whether it's hockey, I was watching the Australian Open tennis yesterday morning, and I was watching Nadal play. Well, he had surgery. I think it was like 8 weeks ago. So him winning the Australian Open was huge. But if you look at Nadal, who just won his 21st Grand Slam tournament, which is now more than anybody in history, right? And this guy's 35 years old. Like, it's the best thing for him to be taking, like on a daily basis, because he's going to continue to compete for another probably 3 or 4 years, as long as he can basically compete at a high level. So, if you're taking Promino, it's helping you maintain your lean muscle mass. It's helping you stay stronger. So if you're an athlete like Nadal, one, it's helping you recover from surgery faster and get you back on the court, but then it's helping you stay on the court longer. And it's actually going to help him extend his career as an athlete.
That makes a ton of sense. It's sorry for the distraction over here, but I thought what was the guy's name that ended up getting kicked out of Australia? Novak Djokovic.
Djokovic. Yeah.
Wasn't he supposed to have the Grand Slam title?
Well, you know what?
Or did I read that wrong?
I think he was ranked. I think he was number 1 ranked for that tournament, but he was in that tournament.
Yeah, I'm aware. I was following the drama unload as it was taking place, and it's additionally funny if somebody took some title from him. I don't follow tennis, obviously. I followed the NFT market for that, which by the way was really cool. And this is kind of an aside over here, but the NFTs that they created for the Australian Open are like pictures of tennis balls, real similar stuff, but you can buy. Sorry, with the NFT, you get like coordinates on the tennis court. So when the ball lands on your coordinates, your like NFT gets points or whatever. Like, it's super cool. And then you get to keep the ball if the game, if you have the game winning, shot on your thing. But I love the innovation behind that. So that's awesome.
Here's another good example outside of Nadal. Look at Tiger Woods right now.
Yes.
Right.
Car accident.
He basically had his lower limb rebuilt. He has severe muscle atrophy. He's now working, he wants to come back and compete again. He was on TV a few months ago playing with his son in that father-son tournament. He looked pretty good. Most people were surprised. But if he was taking Promino right now, he's like rebuilding muscle faster. He's getting stronger. And if you want to recover from something like that and get back, just to the golf course, like, you should be taking it. So I kind of use an example as, okay, there's tennis and there's golf, which people don't look at as super high impact sports. They each have their own, unique, I guess, parts to them. But it goes across all sports. It can go from something like tennis and golf into like football and hockey. There's baseball. Like, pick a sport. Doesn't matter what it is. It applies.
That makes sense. And are you guys planning on reaching? I don't know what type of the regulatory climate you guys are facing. I'm familiar vaguely with the one in the U.S. and by extension, Canada's. But do you have plans in place for reaching outside? I don't know if Latin America, Europe, Asia, et cetera, Australia.
Good question. So myself, before I started this company and in my career, I was the head of international sales for Jameson Laboratories. So I've done business throughout all the Middle East, over in China, Korea, some of Europe, South Central, like right from Mexico right down to Salop, Brazil, as well as all through the Caribbean. So I think I've done 35 countries around the world. Dean Piper, who's my chief sales officer, he's done almost just as much as well. So foreign export is something that we're going to expand to as we grow. We're very experienced at it. We do have global rights to this IP, so we're not going to just sit here and just look after this market. As we grow, we'll bring on distributors in foreign markets. We have a very good business model for that, where some people might think, well, you just can't go and start setting up business in, I don't know, call it the UK or somewhere. But there's a model that works, and there's companies in these foreign markets that are just distributors, and you sell to them in US dollars, and you sell what's called FOB, freight on board. They pay for the product before it ships. You work with them and you help send them the marketing material. They do all the marketing at their end, and they get a discount on the product, so they have the margin to spend on marketing. And it's basically a relationship, and it's just a ship and sell relationship, which then starts building foreign market distribution. And it's a very low risk model, but it starts building your brand in foreign markets around the world.
So does that operate sort of like a franchise? Because that's kind of what it sounds like, the model.
No, it's a distribution contract.
Yeah.
We released a while back. We're working on a joint venture with Natural Made over in Korea. So I've done work in Korea for 20 plus years with this company. I know the CEO very well. Actually, we were texting this morning. They're 13 hours time difference from us. So when it's my morning, it's his night, and vice versa. But it's a distribution agreement, and they're simply a distributor. And if the distribution goes south, we have exits so we can get out of it. But for the most part, I've actually never seen that in my career. But I've seen it once. One time in my career, we had a distributor in one part of China that we had to ixnay when I was with Jameson Laboratories. But besides that, you build relationships and these people. We have relationships already with people around the world. So we're not working with people we don't know. We're working with friendlies.
That makes sense. So you have, let's see, you have Rejuvenate, you have Promino's, the sports one, correct?
Yeah. So Promino will be the flagship brand. So our sports brand is called Jacked RX, but Promino Promino is the feature brand, and that's what's going to get all our focus. If you look out in the marketplace, there's a brand out there. It's called C4. It's a pre-workout product. They expanded in the beverage business about a year and a half ago. Before that, it was just a powder business. It's just one product. It's C4. They're doing 350 million US in revenue, and that's it. So, I say to my team, I go, there's no reason Promino can't be a $300 million rev brand just by itself.
It makes a ton of sense. And what about Canada? I heard very much in Canada, right? So obviously the market in the US is big.
That's just where I live.
That's just where you
live. So Canada, we have Rejuvenate on the shelf in Canada. We reformulated our beverage for Canada regulations because we use a natural sweetener that comes from dates and maple syrup called Aleos. It's approved by the FDA. It's in our beverage in the United States. It's becoming very popular in the nutraceutical and nutrition industry, but Health Canada has no category for it. Health Canada works really slow. They're 5 years behind the United States on any given day. So I took out Aleos. I've added 3 grams of organic sugarcane. We're in full submission right now with them and going through the process. We expect to be able to launch that later this year once we get through our approvals with Health Canada. But they're pretty complicated sometimes. We do know how to deal with them. It's basically simple nutrition. And then also COVID slowed it down. Like people, no one's in the office in Health Canada in Ottawa. They're all at home working, and quite honestly, they're not working as hard as they used to. So it's taken longer than we expected. But we won't ignore Canada. But it's never going to be more than 5% of our business, and it's just a simple fact, right? We're a big, huge
Yep.
country. Loblaws has maybe 600 really good stores that have if you go on the internet, they'll say they have like 1,200 stores. Well, only 600 of those are worth being in. The rest are either don't have a store set for our type of products, or they're old and they're really small, so the linear footage isn't there. So when you look at that, people think Loblaws is just like this big, massive company. But in our industry, they're not as big as people would think they are. And I can go to that side of the border over there, and all of a sudden I'm in 6,000, stores with CVS, 8,400 with Walgreens. You're going to grow at a much bigger rate. And the multiples generally, like what we use a guideline, anything you do in Canada, the US is a factor of 10% more, or sorry, 10 times more, not 10%.
Yep. So tell me about your experience being like in the management. And I'll set up this question. So I have experience on the entrepreneurial side. I've started multiple businesses. Some have been incredibly successful. Some of them have failed. And it's always from the entrepreneur standpoint, right? Like you have this management philosophy, which is the, hey, let's create a good company culture and profitable and, increasing sale. And you're just driving this machine, which is generating money. And then, and so this is kind of, I've been molded with that framework in mind. But then there's other types of CEOs, which is like, I'm going to get ahead of myself and categorize you with, which is, hey, you happen to know about the actual substance of the company, right? First and foremost, your studies, your education, maybe your professional experience. I think of people like Elon Musk in this, right? That guy is the most eccentric CEO ever. He doesn't care about business or government or rules or whatever. He gets bored and makes flamethrowers and then digs tunnels and then sends things to Mars. But like the guy is just a brilliant scientist, computer scientist when it comes to maybe, I don't know, Bill Gates, right? This is a programming genius, and he lands in this position of driving this company where all of a sudden you're looking at revenues and profit margins and Six Sigmas and stuff that's like outside of the core competency. Tell me what your experience has been like from science to leading a company.
Well, I was in business first before I went and did all the science.
So okay.
Yeah,
so there you go.
Yeah, my goal was always be to find a way. I'll be honest, when I first went back to school, right? I left a really good paying job, and it was actually for a successful weight loss chain out of Florida. I was running like 13 clinics for them, and it was great. But I just wasn't fulfilled, and I knew I could do like more. But I need to like get some education behind me in nutrition, because I was always very passionate about nutrition. So, I packed up and I went back to school, and then did my 2 degrees. So I spent, my undergrad was 4 years. It took me about 3.5, almost 4 to complete my master's degree. And then I was going to go to med school, and I wanted to go and be a pediatrician. But then one day I was like, you know what? I can have more impact on society if I find a way to bring business and nutrition, and nutritional science together. And that was like my main goal. So I got out of grad school. I got a job right away in pharmaceutical sales, which I did for a little bit. And that was kind of fun. My golf handicap went down a lot because doctors like to golf.
Yeah.
And then that kind of got boring, and I just was looking for the right opportunity, and got recruited into a company that was called Muscle Tech then. It's now called Iovate Health Sciences now. And that was a sports nutrition company. So there I was developing all their formulations for them, and worked in there for a couple of years growing that company. It was a very young company at the time. So, it's one of 5 executives, and I was doing everything from designing clinical research and doing patent and trademark law to doing marketing and doing product formulation. So it was a big batch of everything. And then just that path, led me to here. And I saw an opportunity to start my own company in nutrition back in 2005. And that's when I started my first company. So at that point in time, if you go back to 2005, yeah, I've got a ton of experience I've learned helping build these other companies, right? But I've never built my own. So yeah, you know what? I've built millions and even billions of dollars of sales for other people and other companies. And it's like, okay, well, now here's the opportunity. I'm going to do it on my own. And that's when I started LSN. So when you talk about, the management process, back then, the only skills I had in managing was just what I learned in other companies. But the best thing I learned working for other companies is what not to do. And I learned what I don't like. Right. And so none of that stuff exists in this building. Like, we're not, that's the best way to put it. I always have an open door. I talk to all my staff every day. I always make sure we have fun. Like, we're very driven, but we're not, we're not on this corporate structured on process where everything has to be like just like this, right? We'll break the mold anytime we need to for the benefit of the company, right? And to drive sales. And we're not, we beat to our own drum, not somebody else's.
So you're telling me is that you guys don't have TPS reports? Have you seen Office Space?
That's the best movie.
That's all I heard there.
TPS reports.
TPS reports.
Yes, I have a cover sheet. No, we don't have TPS reports. We have a lot of regular. We also have definitely have a lot of regular reporting. I'm very strict on the financial side, and that's also that's basically set in stone. I'm big on the numbers, and I always tell people our biggest priority is revenue, and our second priority after that is profitable revenue, and we need to drive that and drive shareholder value. And getting from A to B, you're gonna have a few weaknesses here and there. Some things you probably should do, but you're not doing yet because you don't want to spend capital on it yet. But you just focus on building your base, building your revenue, which is exactly what we're doing. And then as you slowly grow up and move up the growth curve, then you start looking around and getting better at some of the things you knew all along you could be better at, but you're not going to spend capital on stuff that's not driving revenue.
That makes sense. That actually leads into my next question, right? So now you've walked us through the process of going business to science to CEO, and then the next one is now it's publicly traded CEO, right? So while there's no TPS reports, there's obviously requirements when it comes to disclosure and financial transparency, and all the different. I guess it's just a different experience, all the benefits and drawbacks that come with that. Tell me about that, like the difference between working under a publicly traded environment versus a not publicly traded environment.
Well, I can give you one example. I was in here. We had a big snowstorm here a couple of weeks ago. So I was the only guy in the office, myself and my CFO. And we're working on some documentation and work, which you only need to do if you're public. And I was sitting here at my desk. I looked up at him. I said, Sean, why am I doing this? I'm like a physiologist and entrepreneur. I go, like, I've never done this. Well, because I've never done this before in my life. Like, all this stuff has nothing to do with my educational background. But we're doing it because it's part of the requirement. And that's okay. I've told people all the time, I said, the best thing about going public so far is I love everything I've learned in the last, call it 24 months of my life, and somebody I was talking to on the weekend on social media, I said, they asked me a couple of questions and I said, well, I never really planned on trying to build a company and take it public during a global pandemic. Just so happens that's what the universe sent me. But it's not going to stop us. You just kind of adapt and go. So being public is great. It's going to allow this company to maximize its growth and capture opportunities that are out there that you normally wouldn't be able to do if you just stayed private. I was private before. We grew fairly well. There's big market opportunities, and I want to be able to accelerate our growth. My last company, it's public. I sold it for $40 million. I grew it significantly over a short period of time. I started myself with a $100,000 line of credit I took from the bank. I started this company by myself as well, and funded it myself in the early days. So I'm fully vested, not going anywhere for a long period of time. And now, being public is just fun to learn, and we're just like here to grow this thing and make all our shareholders happy.
Well, and it's beginning to sound like being public is not going to have the best of both worlds. Why? Because up until very recently, being private meant you don't have that SEC, the regulatory, FINRA, whatever, the scrutiny of being publicly traded. And in return, you get to be publicly traded, so you're able to raise the capital that way. But now the SEC is turning around and switching their rules around and say, no, if you're private, right, but like companies invest in you, whatever it is, you're going to have to start doing disclosures and compliance things as well. And so, I look at that as like, now you're taking all the incentives away from remaining private to somebody, because now they don't get to raise the capital through the process of going public. Plus they still like on the hook for all the compliance issues, which is crazy. And to me, it's actually kind of an interesting shift, which I'm curious to hear about, because I read this columnist. His name's Matt Levine, and he talks on Bloomberg. He's a semi-satirical individual, very smart and very witty. But he's talking about, when you're running a company and you're the CEO, like your mandate is, and you have this fiduciary mandate to increase or maximize shareholder value, right? So, it's fancy talk for do whatever's in the best interest of the company, et cetera. And along those lines, you have different activities that, and some people derive shareholder value as stock price, right? Like that's the easiest metric to use, and I can see how that comes into play there. And so you get to do that by increasing the internal numbers, right? Like, if sales goes up, then in theory, like the fundamentals of this company makes it intrinsically valuable, et cetera. But then there's other things like, that's getting installed, like ESG, right? So companies are saying, we're trying to do the right thing and we're going to be environmentally friendly. Or another one, which is the one that actually caught my attention, was, you have these ethics guidelines that have to be pushed forward. And so the ethics guideline says, okay, well, I'm going to not commit crimes or whatever it might be. Or I'm going to...
Idea.
What's that?
It's a good idea not to commit crimes.
I was trying to. Well, it's actually funny because the example that was on this study that was made was like, I will not do slavery, right? Which is like a weird thing. That the number of people, the number of companies that have listed under their ethics guidelines to not have slaves has increased something like 30% in the past 3 years. But like, so it's kind of funny, right? But it's not at the same time, because now these companies can go out and say, hey, by the way, my company doesn't allow slaves, right? And therefore, you should like my company more over that one over there, because that one hasn't prohibited slaves yet. And so this one's going to make you feel better if you invest in it, right? But what's interesting about this is if you then break these rules, and the more rules you have, the better it looks, the better you've set yourself across from the competition. But the more rules you've listed, the more rules people can break. So if someone does go out and hire a slave, or hire whatever, I don't know what the word is. If the company over there has a slave and your company has a slave, then all of a sudden your company's on the hook because you explicitly said you wouldn't do that. So now you're like in violation of I don't know what. Like, I don't know. To me, that sounds like an interesting thing of balancing the shareholder value when it comes to fundamental metrics from a financial perspective, and then the outside, which is more it's not really a feel-good component. It's like an actual culture, right? And that's why I put ESG in that kind of same category. So have you bumped into any of that? Like the idea of saying, not only we're going to have solid revenues and projections and profitability, but also we're going to portray this standard of an essentially inherently good company.
Well, I don't need a piece of paper or somebody to tell me how to treat people right. I've always, in my last business, I've always said, I work on this thing called inverse pyramid. So if you take a pyramid, you turn on its point, and so here you got this pyramid, and you divide it in three. So the very top piece, which is the biggest piece, is people. The middle piece is product. and the very bottom piece is profit. And if you look after people first, right, and then bring the best possible product at the best possible price to market, you'd be surprised how easy profits take care of itself. So you always take care of people first. And as an example, my last company, I ended up buying a small manufacturing plant in Eastern Townships, Quebec. So when I bought it, it had like 30 people working in it, some around there, all spoke French. Only very few spoke English. And the coach there is very different than here in Ontario. Over the period of a couple of years from buying that facility, I expanded it 4 times over. I had 150 employees in it when I exited that company. I never had a union. I didn't even have HR in that building. I just looked after everybody. So once I took it over, I put some structure around salaries. People got pay raises. I improved the work environment. Nobody had to tell me to do it. It's just like, yeah, you know what? That's what you do. These people are helping you build a company, right? So you take care of them. And that's exactly what I did. And I never had any problems, like at all. And, even in here, yeah, you know what? We've got an employment manual, right? I've got a new one that, I need to take some time and review to issue out to all the staff. But everybody outside of my door, they all have stock options. They all have what called piece of ownership in the business. I'm very family first. Someone's got, something family wise or something that they got to take care of. I'm always like, yeah, like take the day off, go get it done. Like go look after your family. So from that perspective, if you have good morals and good ethics and respect the people that are working for you, all right, you don't need someone to tell you what to do. It's just common sense. And you don't need a guidelines. I don't need a lawyer to tell me how to do it. I don't need anyone to tell me how to do it. I just know how to do it. Maybe I'll thank my mom for bringing me up right. I don't know, but it's not rocket science. It's called be kind and respect people.
That's actually a really good. That's a really good counter to that. It's a really good philosophy. It's like I'm sorry. Instead of having this framework with which you say, hey, this company does not allow slavery or whatever, like you actually say, okay, let's look at our track record. We've never had slaves in this company, right? Like, and so
Yeah.
then you end up saving yourselves from also the risk, right? Because like I said, listing these rules now increases a chance that somebody within your company breaks. I'm using this kind of silly one, but with regards to
Yeah.
your philosophy, I couldn't agree more, right? Because like after working in different environments, I know that when you walk into that environment for the first day on the job, you look around, right? You have the person that's going to kind of walk you through. It's like, oh, no, let me tell you how it works. Oh, the boss, he's always here on time, so I recommend it, whatever, right? And then, just silly things like the etiquette around the office. Oh, okay, just make sure that if you do the thing with the microwave, that you close this door because otherwise, then the people and then that kind of gets ingrained into your head, right? And so this starts not just about the etiquette inside the office, but also the culture of, okay, well now it's 5 o'clock and everybody's packed up and left, right? Because that's what people do around here, and that's the time that the office
It's not what
closes,
happens here.
right? Yeah, and then you have the opposite ones, which is like, look, I'm going to stay here for as long as I need. Sometimes I'll leave at 5 because I have soccer practice for my kids, but today today I'm going to stay here because I have not finished this presentation or whatever. And so that rubs off on you after that first day or week. You all of a sudden say, okay, the way that you operate, just like I guess when you go to the school or a team sport or whatever, you get that. And having established this way of operating propagates forever, right? And so if you have something that's negative, like you have cultures that are very I don't know if there's bullies, like once again in the fire department, there's a lot of teasing and a lot of rough housing that going on. Like it's really difficult to break that cycle in case you have people that might not like that, right? But if you do it right from the beginning, then you don't have to break the cycle, and you don't have to sit there telling people rule number 3, say please and thank you, right? Like people know that that's how it's done because that's the way they operate, and I believe that's one of the strongest assets companies can have is is culture, is because all of a sudden everybody cares just as much as you care about them. They end up caring about you and it, meaning the company. So
Yep.
that's an intangible asset, which I think is oftentimes missed by scholars or opinions that are talking about strategies, right? So
Right.
that's
Well,
that's
it's
incredible.
pretty simple. You just lead by example. Like if
Well, that's
I
exactly.
go back to the kitchen and grab to put like a coffee cup or something away, and I go to put it in the dishwasher's full of clean dishes. I'll empty the dishwasher. I go, staff might come back there, and I'm emptying the dishwasher in the kitchen because
Yeah.
I don't give a shit. It makes things flow. I mean, what's it take me? 2 minutes? No big deal.
Yeah.
Home. Why did I do it here? This is my second home, so look after it.
Actually, this is kind of a funny story. Like one of my first companies out of college was this technology company where we were providing like remote support and IT services for companies and small businesses, small companies and residential clients, right? So essentially, it was like this is what 20 years ago. This is the first iteration of Geek Squad without the people coming out to your car, right? Because the remote technology to go into your computer and do all these configurations and the remote backup, like all these things. But as it turns out, we had this office full of employees, but like it started off with, let's call it 5 employees, day one type thing. And then all of a sudden the employee would say, hey, the guy's printer doesn't work, whatever. And I'm stuck, like, help me. And then I would go there and my brain likes solving problems and puzzles. I'm like, have you tried checking the drivers and this and that and the other? And I was good at solving these problems, which is why I ended up starting a company similar to this. And so all of a sudden I started becoming better than my employees at this. And I became I can't figure out, boss, come over here. So I was like the lead tech support guy. And then all
Yeah.
of a sudden, fast forward a year and we had 150 employees and it was ridiculous, right? It's like none of them knew how to fish, right? Because I would give it to them every time they asked me for a
I was going to
fish.
say that. Teach them how to fish.
Yeah, and so that was, and I was 23 at the time. Like this was my first time growing a company into that. I'd been in these quasi managerial standpoints, but like I realized how that behavior that I had on the beginning, especially when you're doing a startup, and it does mean that you take out the garbage, and it does mean that you actually clean the office at the end of the day because we don't have, like all these different things.
Yeah.
And not managed properly. 2 years later, I'm running around fixing printers for this company that we ended up selling for millions of dollars, and I was like the guy, right? And then when my brother was in the fire, I left the office for 2 months, and the place broke down. It was like a very important learning experience for me of doing the right things and thinking down the line. So. With that, like, what kind of lessons have you taken or experiences that you've learned that you've either really happy with the way they turned out or in retrospect could have done differently?
Well, I think you can always, when you retrospective, you can always think how you can do stuff differently. Like I can look at this company right now and go, yeah, you know what? If I go circa backwards, 4 or 5 years when I was like developing the base of where we're at now, yeah, I could have done it differently. But there's the path. Um, the path always shows itself. And a lot of people ask me, because they learn my background and they're like, yeah, I want to start my own company. And like, how do you go about it? Right. And then let's ask how. And I'll say to them, well, I go, the how is like, just get started. Like, just start. People wait for perfection. If you wait for perfection, it's never going to be there. It just doesn't work. And I always give people the example of Honda Motor Corp in Japan. They bought their first Honda Civic over here as this like little box Honda Civic. Had a really great engine in it because that's what Mr. Honda expertise was. His expertise wasn't building cars, but he built them anyways. He brought them over here. They didn't take into account all the salt and sand on the roads during the winter, and the cars rusted out like crazy. But if you ask somebody about a Honda Civic, they were like, yeah, super great cars, engine runs forever, but the rest of it falls apart, But he didn't stop. He just like learned from his mistakes and rebuilt it and kept going, and you just keep learning. And you do that with any new company. Like perfection doesn't exist. So there's always reflection. Yeah, I could have done things a little bit differently. I could have grown slower. I could have made it a mom and pop company where I drop a few $100,000 of my own cash in, and I'm happy to do $1 million in revenue, right? And would have made my ex-wife happy, but that's not me. That's not what I do. As an individual with this IP, and I've said this to a couple of large companies, I feel I have a responsibility to take this IP, get it in the hands of as many people as I possibly can, because it is generally good for them. It is good for their health. It's going to help your longevity. It's going to help you build a more active, healthier lifestyle. So you do it. And then the other half of your question, things that I've learned. Well, don't worry about mistakes. Like, mistakes are the best things that can happen. You want to limit them. You don't make mistakes that cost you $1 million. They're not good. But every time I tell people all the time in here, I said, don't be afraid to make a mistake. If you think the mistake you're going to make is going to cost the company money, well, then come to me and we'll discuss it. But the small mistakes they're just a learning curve that makes us improve and makes us better. So don't be afraid to make mistakes, but limit them.
That's awesome. That's excellent advice. So Stuart, we're pretty much running up here on the hour. Thank you so much for doing this. Where can people learn more about Elements? Element Nutritional Sciences is the full name. Is that correct?
That's right. So if you go to our stock ticker, ELMT, and then Inc. after it, so elmtinc.com is our corporate website. From there, you'll see links to our brands, our Jack Directs brand and our Rejuvenate brand. So through that portal, you can learn pretty much everything you'd want to learn about the company and what's going on.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was incredibly enlightful, and enjoy your foot of snow turn to ice for the rest of the week.
Sorry, I appreciate the time. It'll rain tomorrow. It won't be that bad. So, January is our coldest month. We'll get through this. Well, now we're in February. So, yeah, you get through January, February, and after that, weather's hit and miss. Before you know it, it's late April and golf courses are starting to open.
Awesome. Yes. Can't wait for that. All right. Well, take care.
All right. Thanks, James.
Bye.
Bye-bye.